Hello, my name is Michael Lambert, and today I want to talk a little bit about COP26. But before I do, I just want to mention a couple of stories that were in the press last week. The first one was the question of the test and trace expense. The Public Accounrs committee commented that they thought the amount of money involved was eye-watering, was the word they used. And as you know, test and trace has cost £37 billion. Test and trace that was set up and run by Dido Harding, the wife of the government's anti-corruption czar, John Penrose MP. And anyway, she set this up and has managed to spend quite a lot of the 37 billion so far with this test and trace. And when you think of that amount, it's easy to say 37 billion and just, well, yes, okay. But that is 23% of the entire budget of the National Health Service for 1 year. Now, the National Health Service, as it happens, is the biggest employer in Europe. They have 1.3 million employees. I mean, it is a vast, vast organisation. Think of the hundreds and hundreds of hospitals and clinics and doctors and ambulances and equipment and medicines. It's an enormous enterprise. And yet somehow, on test and trace, Dido Harding and her team have spent a fair part of £37 billion. And what has been the result? Every day for the last month or so, if you look at the statistics on Worldometer, we have had the second highest number of new cases every day, except for America. And you have to wonder, what happened to this money? Where did it go? We know that a lot of it was spent on consultants. We know at one time they had over 1,000 consultants, all getting a absolute minimum of £1,000 a day. Some get as much as £7,000 a day, and they are still now employing consultants. What do you need to consult someone from outside about with something like test and trace? It's not really a very complicated concept. We're not designing a rocket to go to Jupiter. Test and trace, £37,000 million. And what bothers me really is this, that nobody seems to care much, really. You know, just sort of, oh, well, okay, the money's gone, yeah. I wonder where it went. It seems an awful lot. Think of something else. We're all going to have to pay that. The taxpayer will have to pay that. That money didn't come from somewhere else. And I'm amazed that people are not more concerned about it and are not insisting on knowing where that money went. I mean, I hope in due course a proper investigation will be carried out, though I've no doubt the government will resist that like crazy. The second story that came out last week was the OBR, that's the Office for Budget Responsibility, which is the organisation set up by the government in order to monitor and check government spending and so on. They announced that the cost of the pandemic to GDP would be 2%, which is a huge amount. I mean, it's a huge hit, that. But they also said that in due course the cost to GDP of Brexit would be 4%. In other words, the cost of Brexit, of taking back control and being masters of the universe, is going to be 4% of GDP, which is a huge, huge, huge amount and will affect us all. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about COP26. Now, the climate crisis and the environment and so on is far, far, far and away the most important problem we all face. I mean, this is a question, it is an existential problem. I mean, the planet, if we don't do something, could cease to exist, or at least our existence on this planet could cease eventually if we don't do something about it. If climate warming is able to get out of control. And even if it isn't, if we can only do a certain amount towards reducing it, there are going to be huge problems in the future, not only with climate, but also with the fact that populations are going to want to move. I mean, there are going to be areas of the Earth, particularly the areas where there are countries where populations are increasing, like in Africa and so on, who are going to want to move. And how are we going to cope with all that? So this is really, really, really important. And it just happens that we are hosting COP26 this year in Glasgow. And I think in many ways that's unfortunate, because I think having someone in charge, I mean, obviously Johnson's going to be the chairman, he's going to be the front man for the whole thing. Having somebody who's simply a stand-up comedian, somebody who's regarded the world over as a buffoon, heading up this conference, I think is a big mistake. It's not something a mistake, it's a very unfortunate situation. And we in the UK, I mean, we should be, since we are hosts, we should be absolutely exemplars of how you deal with global warming, and we should be doing absolutely everything possible to control it and do our part in reducing global warming. We have, of course, done quite a lot. We've reduced carbon emissions quite a lot, and we've built loads of wind farms and other alternative energy. We are working very hard in those areas. But there are so many areas in which we are being counterproductive in terms of global warming. The government is trying to decide whether or not to approve a massive new oil exploration or oilfield off the Shetlands, somewhere called Cambo. They're doing it at the moment. I mean, chances are they will approve it, and if they do approve it, I'm no doubt they'll just wait until after COP26 before they do so. But that is sending a terrible message, because this oilfield is very big and it's going to produce endless oil and gas that's going to just make matters worse. In addition, it seems that we're quite possibly going to approve a new coal field in Cumbria now. Can you believe it? A new coal field in 2021. It seems that the argument is that this will produce coal to fire our steel works, and it seems also that only 15% of the coal that's going to be produced in this mine, if it's allowed to open, will be used in the domestic steel industry. The rest of it, the other 85%, is going to be exported. So we're going to be exporting coal, it seems, if the government has its way, or if those who are in favour of this mine, and 40 Tory MPs have already voted in favour of it. If it goes ahead, then we're going to be exporting 85% of the coal from that mine to be burnt wherever, and just further add to global warming. Not a good message when you're hosting COP26. Even the possibility that you might open a new oil field and a new coal mine. Then there's our policy towards trade, isn't it? We are desperate to get trade deals, and so we're prepared to do trade deals with anybody. We're very keen to join CPTPP so that we can deal with 12 of the 12 countries, some of the furthest countries away from us in the world. And we're all very excited because we've got a deal with New Zealand, whereby we're going to be buying lamb and beef from New Zealand, and that's going to be shipped 12,000 miles to the UK at the expense of domestic farming. I mean, what is the point in that? It's almost insane, isn't it? You let your domestic farmers go bust because they're not going to be able to compete with lamb and beef brought 12,000 miles in huge polluting ships. It doesn't make any sense. And again, it's a terrible message to be sending out. And another thing about shipping, if anybody knows anything about shipping, the cost of bringing a container from China to the UK has gone up 5 to 10 times in a matter of, I mean, it is 5 times as expensive, at least, to bring a container as it was a couple of years ago. I mean, the cost of shipping is absolutely escalating. So what happens if in a few years' time we're depending upon New Zealand for lamb and beef, and suddenly shipping becomes incredibly expensive? Or what happens if at another COP in 5 years' time it's decided that we have to put a stop to non-essential shipping because it's getting desperate? Could well happen. But no, we're going to depend upon a nation as far away from us as you can get to provide our beef and lamb, and we're hoping to send them back goods that we're manufacturing here that I have no idea what we make anymore. And then there's the budget wasn't there. There was Rish Sunak, who during his budget didn't mention global warming or the environment once, not once. He announced that he was reducing the Airline Passenger Tax on internal flights within the UK. Now, I don't know anybody who knows why he did that. What is the point of that? We're sending a message as hosts of COP26, sending a message to the world that we are going to make airline travel cheaper. Everybody knows how seriously airplanes pollute the atmosphere and how important it is to try and curb that and find alternatives and so on. But no, we're going to make it easier. We're going to make it cheaper to go by plane. Come on, everybody, don't go on the train, go on the plane. The plane is a lot cheaper already. Well, we're just going to make it easier. I mean, how stupid is it to make that announcement just before COP26? And then there's the question, apart from the fact, of course, that the Prime Minister has bought himself two big gas-guzzling jets with Union Jacks on them to fly all over the place. He even flew to Cornwall in one of them earlier this year for the G7. Again, what sort of commitment does that show to reducing global warming? And then there's another matter which is not directly related with global warming, but to do with the environment, and that also blew up last week, and that's the sewage issue. Now, this is quite a complicated issue, but basically what it was is that the House of Lords amended a bill which would make it an obligation on the water companies to no longer, or make it prohibit them tipping sewage into the rivers or the sea. Now, the reason this happens is that a lot of our sewers, in fact most of our sewers, are very old, some are even Victorian, and whenever there's a big rainfall, there's a big downfall or excessive rain, and that's happening more and more nowadays with global warming. When there's a big storm, they have these the rights, if they're providing they apply for permission from the government, they have the right to tip sewage into the rivers and into the seas to prevent backup, because if they didn't do that, then the excess water would mean that sewers would back up, and it would cause all sorts of problems with the back up in the streets and all the rest of it. So they're allowed to do it exceptionally on occasions, and this is what they've always done. It happens to a certain extent, probably in many other countries as well. But it seems that the water companies have been doing it more and more. Now, I must say something about the water companies, because we privatised them, years ago, 30 years ago, wasn't it? And we sold to anybody, instead of being sensible and saying, well, you know, or the only people who can buy these are UK shareholders and owners and so on. We sold to anybody. So 71% of the water companies now belong to foreigners. People in Malaysia, people in Australia, people in America, all over, they're owning them. And you have to question what sort of commitment somebody sitting in Australia who's got owns a water company or a chunk of a water company in the UK, just how committed they are to seeing that these overflows don't happen any more than they need to. What sort of commitments they've got to spending money on infrastructure and so on. And it's very much more likely. I mean, for example, one of the water companies, United Utilities, is largely owned by American venture capital funds. I mean, all they're interested in is how much money they're going to make out of it. They're not really very interested in the environment in the UK. Why should they be? And of course, the regulator here, especially now that we're no longer subject to EU law, hooray, hooray, the regulator here is pretty weak. And apparently last year there were 400,000 instances of sewage being tipped into rivers and seas. Now, if Johnson had jumped in and stopped this right from the start, this needn't have become a big story. It could easily have been resolved very quickly, but he's not somebody who's into detail. He's not somebody who acts quickly. He's a ditherer. He prevaricates and wastes time, and then does a U-turn. He's done it time and time again. And so nothing much was done until this story built up on social media, and there were all these images of sewage being tipped into rivers and in the sea and so on. There was one particular image of a huge pipe churning out all this stuff into clean water, and I think it was Langston Harbour. So really shocking pictures. And all this publicity had two effects. The first was that all over the world people see the UK tipping sewage into the rivers and the seas. And there wasn't any necessary explanation or any detail as to why this was happening, but that was the message that came across. You know, I've been travelling all over the world for years and years and years, and I've lost count of the number of times that I've told someone I've come from London, and they've replied by saying, "Must be terrible, all that smog." And I have to explain there hasn't been a single day's smog in 70 years in London. And then they'll say sometimes, "It must be terrible living in a city where it rains every day." And I say, it rains no more in London than it does in Paris. Never has done. And so these things, especially when it's something so shocking as sewage, these images, when they go all around the world, they stick. And people gain the impression that we're dirty, which is a really, really bad thing to do. Bad reputation to have. And the other reason why this is so serious is this, that this year, because of the pandemic, people have gone abroad much less, and people have tended to go on holiday in the UK. And a lot of people have gone to seaside resorts, and you've seen pictures of seasides where the beach is absolutely full of people and packed out, and they've all had a terrific time. All those businesses, you know, the bed and breakfasts and the hotels and the amusement arcades and the fish and chip shops and the ice cream parlours all had a fantastic time this year. And they probably thought that this is going to go on, and next year will be as good, and the future look good. But just think now, if you're a family and you've got children and you're going to go on holiday, do you really want to go to a seaside where you think, because you've read about it all, you've seen these pictures, read all, do you want to go to a seaside where your children are going to be paddling in the water and swimming and maybe swallowing by accident all sorts of God knows what? Do you want to go to a seaside where you think you're going to be sitting on the sand and there might be some washed up excrement next to you? No, people have now got this impression, this so widely broadcast, this impression that everywhere is now unsafe. And indeed, I mean, a governor, I can't remember who it was, somebody the other day said how it was inadvisable to swim in rivers now. I mean, how much damage is that doing? And yet we're hosting COP26. So how can we be telling other people? Johnson will be up there, he'll be up there, it's all a jolly jape for him, and he'll all be telling them, "Come on chaps, we've all got together, we've got to put our shoulders to the wheel, and come on, we've got it all sorted out." And everybody's thinking, "You stupid man." But everybody's thinking about all these things I've been talking about the way we're not really doing what we're preaching. And then, of course, to put the icing on the cake as far as our leadership of COP is concerned, we've decided to fall out with the French, haven't we? That's a very smart idea. And so we've got this, what do we call it, a fishing war going on, I suppose, haven't we? Now, as if we're not already unpopular enough with the EU, we've started this spat. And I have to say, looking at social media, almost everybody I've read about seems to think that the French are right in this. And you know, when there's a dispute like this, and when you know that on one side you have a leader who is known the world over as a liar, who's known to be unreliable, who's known to openly break treaties without batting an eyelid, when you're trying to decide who's right in this dispute, I think the benefit of the doubt is going to be given to the other side. It's going to be given to the French, and I think most people all over the world will think the French are right in this and we're wrong, because we've been wrong with so much else, and because we have this clown who can't be trusted. And you can be so sure. I mean, he's going to COP, and he's going to try and persuade the world to see his wisdom and to all rally round. And yet there are going to be 27 nations there, at least, who are going to be thinking, you idiot, and are already furious with him. Not only that, Biden has made it very clear. There was a press statement the other day about his meeting, or something on Twitter about his meeting with Macron, and clearly they're getting on very, very well indeed. And I think Biden seemed to be making the point that he was siding with the EU in our disputes, because of course he's worried about Northern Ireland. And you have to wonder, this fishing thing could have been solved very easily. It could have been really resolved very easily. A question of a phone call, a bit of reason. If Johnson got involved, he could have sorted it, and it would never blown up to being a big incident as it is now. But he didn't. And likewise with this, deliberately with the Northern Ireland protocol, this idea of at the last minute saying we don't want the ECJ being involved, the European Court of Justice being involved in any disputes, knowing that the EU could never accept that. You might have to wonder whether Johnson's policy is not deliberately to invoke Article 16 and to have a complete break. And I suspect, and I think we'll probably see in the next couple of weeks, within a couple of weeks of the end of this COP26, he doesn't want any more trouble there. Within a couple of weeks, he will be invoking Article 16, and the result of that will be, I mean, it's just going to be so much worse, because the EU will immediately start imposing duties on goods we're exporting there. They'll be slowing everything up at Calais. They'll be making life very difficult for us, and frankly, why shouldn't they? I mean, their patience has been stretched. The patience of the EU has been stretched just so far with these with our messing about with Brexit. I heard George Eustace on the radio the other day, and he was saying about this boat that's been impounded. He said, well, two can play that game, tit for tat, we can do just the same. I mean, how stupid is that? Where does that lead to? You can start getting gunboats out? And then the French said, didn't they, said that they might block British vessels going unloading in French ports. And they said also that they might start examining lorries a bit more carefully when they arrive in Calais. Well, I know from my own personal experience, if they want to be difficult when you're entering the country, they can hold you up for as long as they like, and there's nothing you can do about it. And so if that happens, particularly if we invoke Article 16, if that happens and at Calais they start blocking lorries and holding them up, so there's a big backlog, and so more lorries can't come, and so therefore the other ones can't get back to England because it all runs in a circle, to and fro all the time, and the whole thing gets blocked out. What happens then? What's George Eustace going to suggest? That tit for tat, two can play that game? We don't have any border controls. We haven't had since Brexit. We have no border controls. Lorries drive off the boat and they go wherever they want to go. No controls at all. Can you imagine the amount of smuggling that's gone on this year? And we're not ready to impose controls. We don't have the 50,000 custom officers we're going to need. We don't have the facilities. So if we do invoke Article 16 and the French do start being difficult at uncooperative in Calais, it's going to cause absolute chaos. And that route is so vital. I mean, so many of our imports, particularly food, come through Dover-Calais. But to have this row, which he could have stopped, blow up a week before COP26, where he wants to rally the whole world, it's the mark of just an absolutely useless Prime Minister, a self-obsessed, dishonest and utterly incompetent Prime Minister. And he has absolute control, make no mistake, he is the government. That one man is deciding the fate of all of us. This clown. Anyway, on that happy note, I will finish there. If you've watched this far, thank you very much indeed. If you haven't already done so and you wouldn't mind subscribing, I'd really appreciate it very much indeed. And until next time, bye-bye.